my personal experience with AI, and more specifically, generative AI. This is a period of experimentation and challenge in understanding art, design, and creativity at that intersection. I want to gauge where the room is as it relates to AI. And so there's a camera trained on some of you, and I see some of you in the chat. So I'm going to ask 2 questions, and I want you to respond with applause, or actually, let's do hand raising. How many of you are engaging today with AI for copy and language? By a show of hands, if you're using it today for copy and language, let me see your hands. Let me see you wave your hands. Okay, I see a few of you. Okay, next question. How many of you are engaging with AI for art? Let me see your hands. Okay, I could barely see the room, but I'm hoping that there were a few hands. So I was resistant to it in the beginning, just want to let you know, because I was coming off of a period of engaging with NFTs and kind of being pushed into Web3. And I had some friends that said, Delanie, you really need to get into this. And so I took the advice, glad that I did. And so if you are not, I encourage that all of you continue your current creative practice, right? Do not stray from that, but you must engage in the learning of these technologies. You must do that. I encourage that. And you must do it because you've got to develop an expertise, okay? You've got to understand how they work. You've got to understand the advantages and the disadvantages, but every one of you who is a practicing artist, I implore you to learn this stuff. And so my background is a graphic designer, but I've got about 20 years practicing graphic and product design, managing product development for brands who are seeking to establish market advantage and pretty much barriers to entry by protecting their ideas and their products. They wanted to make sure that they could defend copyright, to gain market advantage, but also ensure that we were not in violation of copyright in the products we developed. It's very much about protecting ideas and products. And so I did a lot of work in working closely with legal counsel, developing processes on how artists and designers could formulate ideas that were defensible, documenting proof of concept, ideation. And so I say that to let you know that my approach to AI is with a really deep understanding of copyright and IP. And that comes first, because that is kind of it's the wild, wild west, as we say in America, kind of a lawless territory today of how we approach copyrights in IP, intellectual property. In the United States, it's been determined that copyrights can only be issued to people and not technology or machines. So that is where we're at. And no one can kind of predict the future, but I want to be on record as a representative of a guild, and you'll hear from our president soon, but we support human creativity. Bottom line, baseline, we support the industry that funds, our ability to earn and take care of our families. We support that. But I would be wrong if I did not tell each of you to make sure that you engage and understand this technology, okay? I relate what's happening, and I'm gonna date myself. I relate what's happening to the beginning of my career as a designer, which was the introduction of the Macintosh computer. That was the year that it was introduced in my college. And that was controversial, right? Because that was technology replacing traditional design practice by hand. But that period opened up, you've got a company that then created the iPhone, that then created this app ecosystem. Everything has changed, right? And so I look for AI to kind of do the same thing in the next 10 years. And that's why I want to make sure that all of you are engaged. And so when it comes to copywriting, data organization and research, there's a real benefit there, or even writing a creative brief, but the saying, garbage in, garbage out. You have to have a bit of expertise and experience to leverage this technology, because you've got to check the work. This using this technology when it comes to the language part, it's not all accurate. It's pretty good, but it's not accurate. So you kind of have to know what you're doing. When it comes to the generative AI, that's the area that we as practicing artists are concerned about, because the way that it was developed it has been very unethical. All of us who have shared our work online are part of the community that have trained these models. But we cannot be concerned with getting that back, because Pandora's out the box, right? So the way that we can be prepared is to learn it, to become experts. It is my personal opinion that we artists are going to be the ones that can leverage it best. Why? Because we have the practical training. We who have gone to maybe art college or art school, or we've got the job experience. We know how to write a brief. We know how to read a brief. So because of those skills and experiences, we are better off than the person that's just using AI for fun to leverage those tools. And so AI, generative and written, it can help us be more efficient. It can automate some of the things that we do in terms of preparing for a job or research or briefing a client. The good thing is that it does make art more accessible, right? You've got a little bit of democratization there, which I think is fair. Not everybody can go to art school. Not everybody can do that. So it makes art accessible to everybody. That's a good thing for our industry. But overall, the way that we integrate AI, and I'm speaking of generative AI, into our process is going to evolve. Today, I do a lot of experimentation. I use AI, and I've mastered some prompt writing, which is key. You've got to learn how to write a prompt. But now I can show a client 50 ideas instead of a few sketches, and I can do it like that. And there's a little bit of art editing that I use to take the images out that don't exactly do what I need. But I use that process to then create a model that I go on to actually creating art that I create myself. So when it comes to AI, we are concerned about the economic impacts that it has on all of us artists and creators who we feel that we're not getting jobs because of this technology, right? And then when it comes to the dynamics of AI, we must know that while it's going to replace a percentage of designers, we're learning that the accuracy is not there. We know that you can't get copyright for some of this work. So big industry is not going to be able to use AI in the way that some artists fear. The one thing that I want to make sure, and then I want to open up this for question, is that there are no experts in this. This technology is fast evolving. Each one of you in this room, if you start today, have the opportunity to become an expert, and you must do it. I encourage you to engage critically, consider not what it can do today, what it should do, how we ethically use our voices in our practice to help shape how it's used, how it aligns with your values, but also what it does in the future. We can shape that. Building a collaborative community. I engage in a lot of groups where I'm learning. I see ethical use and unethical use, but you must engage. And in conclusion, because the technology moves quickly, I engage for you to lean into the work that we do at the Guild. I encourage you to look at the hashtags for legislation and conversations around AI, because there's a change every week. Where we are today is not going to be where we are in 6 months to a year. But let's make sure that we are navigating it ethically. We are making sure that we can leverage it to our own benefits for economic benefit, but also that we are respecting human creativity in a way that we can defend copyright. And so with that, I know I said a lot quickly. I wanted to know if there are any questions. And I know that our forum moderator probably should have asked that instead of me.
Well, that's okay. Thank you so much, Delanie. And we are going to take questions. I see that hand, Yannick, but we want to hear from two other persons. And then we're going to open it up to hear persons' experiences with AI thus far. And it's true, as you say, it is emerging and evolving. And therefore, artists need to be articulate and expressing how they would want to see this shape, especially where the law is concerned. But at this time, I want to hear from Sharon Cox Mold. She is Jamaican born, based in the US, a fine artist, and she uses AI in her business. She's also a JAMCOPY affiliate. So we want to hear her experience. And then after that, we want to hear some legal dimensions. And I will introduce that person after. But Sharon, please tell us, what has been your experience in using AI?
I use AI for quite a few things. One of the things that is great for me is that I can use my designs and use AI to generate several other designs from it. And it uses my original style and my original thought pattern and makes it into several different products. I don't think that personally that I could do so many different things on my own, doing it the regular fine art way without AI. I am actually very impressed by the flexibility that it gives me. And in a way, I have no fear that it can replace me, because I actually think a lot out of the box. And so it can only learn from what I produce. Some of the things that I'm concerned about with AI is once I make it, once I do a design, how do I license it? I know I use my traditional way to register my intellectual property and things like that. But my concern was, is there another way? Is there something I'm missing legally that can use my creation, allow my creations to slip out of my hands? You know, that is a concern of mine. However, in terms of the AI, it gives me a lot more flexibility. It gives me a lot more opportunity to present my ideas in different ways to my various different clients, which is how I use it. And it also allows me to improve maybe or blend some of my creations one into the other in a faster way than the traditional graphics programs that I had used. And it is now built into some of those graphic programs, which are like Corel Draw, for instance, and some of those have AI built into it now, which makes it easier if you're using those to make it more flexible. Please forgive me, I'm in my car. I had to run out. But that's some of my thoughts on AI. I am out of the space where I plan to have this meeting.
That's okay, Sharon. Thanks so much. You're on the run, but we're appreciating your sharing your experiences with us. So you have raised some of the real legal questions as to preventing your work being absorbed into the data collection that AI takes on, and also can you protect your work if you have incorporated work that has been generated by AI. So at this time, I'm going to invite Dr. David Felipe Alvarez, who is Associate Professor and Researcher at the University of Tolima in Colombia, and his specializations include intellectual property. So Dr. Alvarez, please do tell us about some of the legal developments of this emerging and evolving area of AI.
All right.
I'm going to share the screen just because I prepare a small presentation. So, oh, I will share my screen. Yes. Second. That's it. Can you see now the presentation?
Yes, we can. Yes, we
All
can.
right.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So, my idea of this presentation is about talking about artificial intelligence and copyright for the visual arts. And it is very important for me to take a look at this very well-known painting that we know from Van Gogh. Yes. And if we move it and zoom it in, we will see these small amounts of parts of the painting. Now, if we see this now, we may think that this is the same painting, but this is actually a paint made by Delanie, this well-known artificial intelligence, which I used to make a prompt. I used to make this painting using a prompt saying, please make a Van Gogh style painting with a cat. And why I'm using this? Because if we think about copyright, we need to think about many things at the same time. We need to think not only that copyright protects the interests of the authors in terms of the property, but also the implications that this property has for social benefit. So the intellectual creation, like literary or artistic creation, have the protection for the creator, and it means ownership about the creation and property about the creation, as we all already know, because all the presentations that have taken place on the morning. And we have, as authors, we have rights, moral rights and economic rights. So what are the potential implications that artificial intelligence can have for copyright law? What can we do? What are the concerns that we have? And what answers can we find about this? The first thing that I would like to say is that we need to think that artificial intelligence can be used, as one of the persons who talked before say, we can use it to create a new output. Yes. And the big question here is that a work, and will be that copyright protected work? And who will be the owner of that work? Because the first thing is, okay, will this creation made by an artificial intelligence be protected by copyright? Will that satisfy the requirements that copyright has in terms of originality, in terms of protections only of the expression and not ideas, etc.? So this is one of the main questions that we have. We need to think about originality. We need to think about originality not only in terms of the objective way of thinking of originality, but also the subjective means of originality, which means the personal contribution of the author. If we think about this, we will say, all right, artificial intelligence is not a person, then therefore there won't be a personal input in terms of what they create. So the next question will be, who owns that thing that is created by an artificial intelligence? And there is some possible answers. One of these is that whoever making the prompt, the order that you give to the artificial intelligence to create whatever, or the software owner that that owns the artificial intelligence, or the software author who creates the artificial intelligence. I was checking in the same way that the United Kingdom Copyright Act, Jamaica has this legislation that says that a computer created, or a computer generated work belongs to the person who commands the computer to create the work that is generated by a computer. So is this a proper answer for these kind of questions? Because probably the answer would be then that the creation is owned by whoever making the prompt, because it's the one who use the software to create the particular work. But that's one of the questions that are not really answered already in this matter. Now, from the other point of view, we need to understand that artificial intelligence also use several inputs in terms of data that can be protected by not only copyright, but many other ways of protection by intellectual property. So copyrights, copyrighted works, inventions, trademark, data, and other information that might be protected, for example, as traditional knowledge, folklore, and other kinds of information that might be protected by intellectual property law. So are these uses authorized in terms of what the artificial intelligence does? It's possible to apply, in this case, exceptions or limitations in terms of the way that the use of these productions can be permitted or allowed for the artificial intelligence. Is there any liability for these uses? So these are many questions that we need to think about. So what is possible to do in terms of copyright, for example, with these kind of products that we protect for the works, for instance? We already know that ideas are free. Copyright doesn't protect ideas. We can think that is the use of a work made by an artificial intelligence is a new form of exploitation, like a new economic right that will be possible. It's possible then that have some kind of royalties for this use in terms of the use of a work by artificial intelligence. That might be possible. And also, who owns the data that is related to a copyrighted work? The data, because what an artificial intelligence does is it convert the work into data that she will use to produce a new work. So who pay the bills for these uses? Who is responsible? Who will acknowledge that this is a possible way of affectation of taking use of a copyrighted work? So if something is created in terms of an artificial intelligence, it would be possible to recognize that an artificial intelligence is an author and who owns those rights. Is there authorship in terms of artificial intelligence or only ownership? And this is very important because when we say, okay, maybe a product created for an artificial intelligence might be protected, should be protected in the same way that copyright protects the original works? Or should we create a less strong rights? Like, for example, some academics have suggested to protect by neighborhood rights or some other different kind of rights. So the fact in terms of the competition that a product created by an artificial intelligence is possible, and it's okay to understand that this thing created will be compete in the same way with works created by humans, or should be that understood as unfair competition? Those questions create some possible answers that I would like to propose here. And those answers is what can we do with artificial intelligence? The first thing is, okay, no protection. We defend one idea that is, you need to think that copyright and intellectual property law allows us to understand that there is a lot of raw material available. What is this kind of raw material available? For instance, raw material could be understood as the ideas that flows about everybody. Yes, ideas are raw material because we work from the creation of ideas. We work on the ideas and create new works. So the amount of raw material that is available is very important in terms of what we can create. If we say that the product created by an artificial intelligence is free, on the public domain, the raw material available will be increased and you will be able to create more. This is one option. Another option, as I already say, is create a neighboring rights. Yes, because in some theories, you will understand that, for example, the rights for broadcasters is not related really for their the creation that they make, because they do not any creation. They just allow and make an effort and invest in terms of disseminate works. So the protection for neighboring rights is a response for the invest that they do, but not necessarily is a requirement of originality. And this is one possible answer. Another answer would be, or could be, say that an artificial intelligence might be as a new kind of person. This is a post-human understanding of copyright. And we will say, if we understand that an artificial intelligence could be seen as a person, then a new category of person will be entitled to have copyright. But this is very far away, obviously. But it's something that is important to think about. Another way is if we create with an AI, yes, what we have is that ideas are not protected. We use data and produce a new work, which might be protected by copyright law. So if protected by copyright law, that is the kind of question that someone asked before I start talking. What is protected? Your own personal contribution, or the contribution that is the result that by adding the product of the artificial intelligence and your own creation. Depends on the way we answer these questions before, we can answer also this question. So another possibility is saying, well, first, you can pay a levy, yes, because you are using the raw material that a copyrighted work, an original copyright work already existing, is used by an artificial intelligence in terms of to create a new work. So we need to compensate the author because his or her work has been used for the artificial intelligence. So we need to pay a levy, not an exclusive right, but a levy. That would be another possible answer in terms of the responsibility for using protected works. Also, another possibility is understand that the product created by an artificial intelligence is in the public domain, but will create a special kind of right that is not an exclusive right, but a domain public payant that comes from a concept from the French law. So you use the raw material that artificial intelligence provides, and you compensate, but you don't have or the owner of the product from the artificial intelligence is not a copyrighted material, so you don't have to respect an exclusive right, but just only to pay this compensation by a domain public payant. Finally, there is the question, who owns the data? Who owns the data that a copyrighted work produces? And we defend that we need to understand in terms of the market that copyrighted works are not only protected in terms of money, but also the data that also means money have to be understood by the authors. I mean, when you start to when you start to sign contracts regarding your works, you need to introduce the control or some way in which you can monetize your data, the data related with your work. And this is very important because it's one of the main things that is making artificial intelligence work. That gives us the most important thing that I think is important for us to say here. We need to take care of authors' contracts. We need to introduce data into the concept of what we negotiate when we negotiated copyright works. All right. So this is the conclusive remarks that I want to say. We need to understand that the creation starts by an ideation, that creation also responds normally to an incentive, but creation is also the exercise of free speech, and that creation means authorship, and that authorship means autonomy in terms of the author that decides about his or her work. And that autonomy is important in terms of competitivity, yes, in the market in terms of the amount of raw material that is available for society to create new works. And the question that I'm making here is, are we okay understanding that works created by artificial intelligence compete in the same way in the market that works created by human beings? This is one of the questions that I would like to put in this discussion in terms of what are we doing. So this is finally what is very important for us to discuss. If you allow me, I would like to invite you to hear in Spanish, obviously, a radio show that we have about intellectual property and creativity. So if you are interested, you can follow this webpage. And that's it. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I will love to answer.
Thank you very much, David. So we're going to take any questions or comments that persons may have on their use of AI, their questions or concerns about the copyright law. The law does recognize computer-generated works, but the author is the person who makes the necessary arrangements for the computer to then generate this work. So the author is a human person. And certainly something, as the area is evolving, that artists would need to be aware of when they're using various platforms to check and secure that their eventual creativity is not absorbed into the data through that platform that there's used, and then it's made available to be used by others. But also, does that platform indicate the sources of their information so that you are not taking somebody else's work that is still under copyright protection, and then you expose yourself possibly to a claim of infringement because you've incorporated their work without their permission. So these are some of the questions that we have to be aware of as we're using this new fascinating technological tool. So let us see if we have any questions. You can raise your hand or put your questions into the chat and we'll pick them up. Anyone having any questions, anything they want to ask? Yes, please. Okay.
Good morning. I'm Sylvia Dallas, CEO of the Publishers Notebook Limited. One of the things I noticed on Amazon, this is not necessarily visual arts, but I did a book cover for a client, and there was a particular type of nugget I wanted to generate. I just could not articulate it while I was drawing, so I asked AI to generate it. I did notice when I was uploading on Amazon that it did ask if you used any AI generated work, and if you answered yes, you had to state the source, which AI platform you use. Also, you have to put it in the book description that a particular art or a particular section of the book is generated by which AI and so on. So it's not really a question, it's just really a statement of something I noticed, but I did wonder, does doing that decrease the liability of the author in any way? Because by stating the source of where you're getting this, is the author protected in any way because of that?
It's a step in the right direction, but they still, if that AI platform cannot identify the sources that you have used, you are still at risk, as is the platform owner. So if they are incorporating, or if they have made available to you protected works and you have them incorporated, so there's a chain now, but there's a chain of responsibility. So these are some of the questions that they are putting, and I understand from the literature that legal suits are being brought against some of these AI platforms because they are not indicating the source or that they have gotten permission. I remember hearing through a presentation from UNESCO that of the 15 million websites that are scraped for data, only 0.03% actually uses protected works in the material that is made available through AI. But still, that's 15 million, and 0.03 can still be quite significant. So the area is still evolving, but this is something to to be aware of. Or, as we had discussed earlier, in fair dealing, you may have taken a portion of a work, but then you have so modified it and you've so transformed that you have now expressed yourself on this work, that the original material that you have used is no longer evident because you have now added to it that it really is your hand that has created the work. So these are some of the challenges. Dr. David or Delanie, any comment that you have on that scenario that we heard from our participant? In identifying the sources, yes.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
okay to speak?
Yes.
I'm a skeptic, but it's such a slippery slope when it comes to data protection. I don't know if you heard the recent conversation this past week about selling of data from Facebook to Netflix. That being said, just know that once you upload something, no matter what the small type says, the legal language says, you can't be sure. To my earlier point about the rules around, or the conversations around AI are so fast moving. What might be true today may not be the case for, in 6 months. So I can't offer any affirmative comment on that question. I just say be careful, be very careful.
Yeah, I agree with Delanie. I will short the time frame and we'll say next 6 hours probably because it's changing so fast that you actually don't know, and you need to be very, very aware. And well, what I will say to everybody is be very careful reading. I know that is annoying, but read the terms and conditions of the use of your AIs. Please do that. Be sure that you understand who is the owner of the product that you create using the AI, because in many cases it's possible that you are accepting that the owner will be the owner of the AI, and you will lose. I mean, you can have it, you can exploit it, but then you realize suddenly that it's your work and it's anywhere, and you have no control, and you will not be able to control anything because in the terms of conditions of the AI, you agree to use and accept that the owner will be the owner of the AI. That is just an example, but it's another problem. I don't know if you have heard about this, but for example, with Spotify, I think it was, or the other one, Deezer, that they start to download and to raise a lot of musical works that were created by AI, and people use them as if they were the original authors. Because what they do is use an AI to create a work, a musical work, upload it to Deezer, and get royalties for that, which is not a copyrighted work. In general speaking, it's not a copyrighted work. And they attribute that creation as theirs, falsely, because it's not theirs either. And they get money for that. So it's not the way that you should do this kind of thing. So this is not really clear yet. And we lawyers, everybody, I was in a discussion yesterday here in Bogota in the book fair, and one of the colleagues said the law need to be behind the changes of technology, because we need to think, we need to understand what is going on and then react. And many people is saying, change the law, do something now. And we say, okay, yes, we can do something now, but as we already said with Delanie, if we do something now, in 5 minutes, it's not going to work. We don't know how this thing is going to be. So we need to see the big picture in this, and these discussions are very important for this. Thank you.
I wanted to just make one share. My colleague, Unique, shared a website. It's a good tool. to search to see if you've been your data has been uploaded, if a system has trained on your data. The other thing, I'm talking to a lot of creators, fine artists, designers, and the opinions that I'm hearing from fine artists, they are choosing not to show any of their work online, any of their new work. They are not sharing to protect it from all of this scraping. And so that's one approach. And choosing maybe to represent some representative, works from their collection just to show style. But that is an option that some fine artists are taking. And then the other aspect, I think, of what's going to happen with law in the US, when companies are acquiring artwork to produce a product, they want to be able to own the copyright. They want to be able to be assigned the copyrights. I believe those are going to be the accountability holders for what develops in the future, because if you can't assign the copyrights or the rights, the accountability lies on an organization or a corporation who's got the bank to fund a kind of a legal defense of a problem. And so I think it's going to become interesting, as it's going to be harder to distinguish what's actually art that you can defend, you can show the proof of concept, versus art that might be, purchased from some website that didn't give a full documentation on how it's created. So I think it's going to become really interesting.
Yes, and possibly it is tragic, near tragic, that technology, which has facilitated the small person to have such global reach with their products, now they have to hide away from technology in how it has evolved, because it is stealing, or it is exposing or allowing them to be, rendering them vulnerable to exploitation by technology itself, or those that are creating this newest technology. Okay, well, Julian, I'm not hearing Alfonso. Please, can you go ahead, Julian?
Question. I can read the question that he asked from the chat. He says the main way to answer. Oh, sorry. The question is, what about AI generated art that has been authored by prompt author and modified in another software outside the AI program? Isn't this copyrighted? I would say, if the result is the product of a human contribution that is original, it's possible to say that something that way is copyrighted. The question will be, the first thing that you use is copyrighted and you need to pay for that, for example. It depends on the protection that we may understand if this product from the AI is protected or not. And that depends on the approach that we take. If we use the Jamaican law, as we say, regarding the computer-generated work, probably it is copyrighted.
Okay, thank you. I don't see Alfonso. He hasn't come back. It was Jillian's question. Are there any other questions either in the room? Yes, sir, Mr. Cook.
Yeah, I'm just expanding what Delanie has said, that in today's market space, the online platform is a area that visual artists use to market their stuff. And it's unfortunate at this point that visual artists have to be hiding their product from this very platform that give them worldwide reach.
Absolutely, but we are creative beings. I'm sure that we will find some way to preserve the access through the technology, but also to control or to regulate it as well. Are there any other comments, any other questions? Any final words from our guests? Delanie, David?
I just, as I encouraged, because I too was very skeptical, lean in a little bit, learn what you can, and you will, you'll know more than your colleague and you develop, you will develop your expertise over time. I think what's going to help shape is more of us at the conversation table, sharing how we use art, how we integrate it into our process. I think that's going to go a long way for how laws develop around including IP and copyright protection. But we got to be at the table, so get involved.
Yes, indeed. I will say the same. Get involved and participate. Be aware of the constant changes that the legislation will experience in the next few years, probably. And we are in the verge of a probably new international law regarding this matter, but we don't know what's going to happen. But if we don't take action and participation in terms of our interests as authors, and it's very possible that others will take the decisions and not us. I'm very worried in terms of the interest that will be protected in terms of AI. I think that we need to take participation, and we need to participate through our governments, because these discussions will take place in the international forums, and we need to take participation from our governments in these international forums. This is very important. In practical terms, read contracts, read the terms of use, and also if you don't know, find any advice, legal advice in a way that is possible, but try to find legal advice before taking a decision that maybe is not the right one, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, David and Delanie. And just to say also that in Jamaica, the Office of the Prime Minister has set up a committee to examine AI and whether legislation needs to be brought in. So I think that we all need to keep our ears keenly open as to developments locally. And JAMCOPY affiliates, I think, if I may say, COO, we will be happy to hear from you, your experiences, because that moment I'm sure will come when the government will want to look at the Copyright Act. And so we would want to be ready with our comments and our recommendations. So I'm inviting JAMCOPY affiliates, please do share your thoughts with us and your experiences, your concerns, and your recommendations for how the law can be shaped locally. Thank you very much. So thank you again, Delanie. Thank you, David, so much for your time.